The sky burned orange that day. Not the gentle hue of sunset, but the angry glow of atmosphere catching fire. Jack Wells stood frozen at the viewport of ISS Pathfinder, watching as the Vraxian ships descended through Earth's clouds like metal raindrops. "Sir, lunar colony just went dark," reported his communications officer, voice cracking. Jack couldn't tear his eyes away from the window. The moon, humanity's proud first step into permanent space habitation, now displayed a smoking crater where Armstrong Base had stood minutes earlier. 15,000 people, gone without warning. "Get me Fleet Admiral Foster," Jack ordered, finally turning from a horrific view, "and prepare emergency protocols." The call connected faster than expected. Diane Foster's face appeared on screen, her usually perfect uniform disheveled, a thin line of blood trickling from her temple. "Wells, thank God. Pentagon's been hit. Most of command is gone." She moved as she spoke, alarms blaring in her background. "They came without warning, without demands." "What are our orders, Admiral?" Foster's eyes hardened. "Survive. Get as many people off planet as possible. The colony ships weren't scheduled for launch for another 3 months, but they're all we've got." Jack nodded. "Pathfinder will coordinate evacuation efforts from orbit. We still have eyes on most continents." "One more thing," Foster said, lowering her voice. "We intercepted a transmission between their vessels." Dr. Murphy translated it. Jack felt his stomach sink. Alan Murphy was Earth's leading xenobiologist, the man who had spent years warning about the possibility of hostile first contact. What did it say? "They're calling us a vermin species. No diplomatic contact intended. This is extermination, pure and simple." The screen shook violently, dust falling around the Admiral. "I need to go. United Defense Force is activating worldwide. Get those ships launched, Commander." Over the next 72 hours, Jack coordinated the most desperate evacuation in human history. The experimental colony vessels, massive ships designed to carry 10,000 colonists each to distant star systems, were loaded far beyond capacity. Regular people became instant astronauts, families crammed into cargo bays, children crying as Earth, the only home humanity had ever known, receded through viewport windows. Dr. Alan Murphy joined Jack on the bridge on the third day, his face haggard from lack of sleep. 14 ships away, Jack informed him. 4 more preparing for launch. If we're lucky, we might save 5% of the population. Murphy nodded grimly. "I spent my career preparing for this moment. Ran simulations, wrote papers. Nobody wanted to believe me." "Why didn't they send a message first? Make demands?" Jack asked. "Because we're not worth talking to," Murphy said simply. "In their eyes, we're insects to be crushed." A young officer interrupted them. "Sir, President Chen is broadcasting." The screen showed the United Nations General Assembly, now serving as emergency headquarters. World leaders from previously hostile nations sat side by side, differences forgotten in the face of extinction. President Chen stood at the podium, somehow maintaining composure despite the catastrophe. "Today, humanity faces its greatest challenge. Our nations are no longer separate entities, but one people fighting for survival. The United Defense Force now commands all military assets globally. Civilian evacuations continue." She paused, emotion finally breaking through. "To those leaving Earth, you carry humanity's future among the stars. To those staying behind, your sacrifice will be remembered for as long as our species exists." Jack turned away from the screen, a lump in his throat. "Sir," called his navigator, "Vraxian vessels approaching our position." "Prepare to break orbit," Jack ordered. "We need to protect those launch sites as long as possible." As Pathfinder's engines roared to life, Jack made a silent promise to Earth below. This wouldn't be the end. Somehow, somewhere, humanity would survive. And someday, they would return. The refugee fleets scattered across the stars like dandelion seeds in a hurricane. Captain Susan Brooks commanded the largest group, 7 overcrowded ships carrying nearly 80,000 survivors. 3 months into their desperate flight, she gathered her officers in the cramped command center of the flagship Defiant. "We've lost contact with 2 more groups," she announced, pointing to blank spots on the star chart. "Vraxian pursuit vessels are hunting methodically. Standard engines leave too much of a trace." Lieutenant Ryan Miller, barely 30 and now chief engineer by tragic default, cleared his throat. "I may have a solution, Captain. We've been experimenting with the theoretical drive designs from Earth's quantum labs." Susan raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "We're calling it the Ghost Drive. It doesn't bend space like conventional FTL. It slides between dimensional planes. No trace, no wake, like we were never there." "Will it work?" Susan asked plainly. Ryan hesitated. "The math checks out, but we've never tested it on this scale." Susan studied the star chart again. Red markers showed confirmed human extermination sites. "We're out of options. Install it on the scout ship first. If it works, retrofit the fleet." 2 weeks later, the scout ship Phoenix vanished between stars under Ryan's experimental drive. Susan paced the bridge for 40 agonizing hours until it reappeared exactly where predicted, having traveled undetected past 3 Vraxian patrol zones. Meanwhile, on a distant world beyond the reach of the Vraxian Empire, Director John Hayes watched the construction of humanity's first hidden colony. The planet, quickly named Sanctuary, offered breathable air and fertile soil beneath perpetually overcast skies that helped shield them from orbital detection. "We're establishing food production in the Northern Valley," reported Olivia Garcia, the environmental engineer who transformed from designing urban parks to creating an entire ecosystem for human survival. "The native plants are compatible with Earth crops. We might actually survive here." John nodded, watching children play near the half-finished habitation units. 6,000 survivors looked to him for leadership, for hope. "The underground facilities, 70% complete," Olivia replied. "If we're discovered, we can hide 3,000 below ground indefinitely." Later that evening, John met with the archaeological team that had made an unsettling discovery in the hills east of the settlement. Dr. Kate Lewis led him through a narrow cave entrance into a vast underground chamber. "We're not the first," she said simply, shining her light on massive stone structures covered in unfamiliar symbols. "Another alien outpost?" John asked. Kate shook her head. "No. According to preliminary carbon dating, this civilization collapsed approximately 50,000 years ago." She pointed her light at distinct scorch marks on the walls. "They were attacked. Systematically." "You think?" "I think the Vraxians, or the civilization they represent, has done this before," Kate said grimly. "Exterminated species they deemed threatening." 3 systems away, Commander Peter Williams watched his display as Earth's first successful counterattack unfolded. His small fleet of repurposed mining vessels, hastily equipped with experimental weapons, had ambushed a lone Vraxian cruiser near an abandoned human outpost. "Target shields at 40%, reported his weapons officer. Peter nodded grimly. "Continue firing pattern. We need to take this ship intact if possible." The battle lasted another hour before the damaged Vraxian vessel lost engine power. Peter led the boarding party himself, stepping carefully through alien corridors until they reached the command center. The Vraxian captain, a towering being with iridescent scales and 4 arms, hissed something their translators couldn't catch. "Tell your leaders," Peter said, knowing his words were being recorded, "this is just the beginning. You attacked us without warning or mercy. Now humanity has one message for your empire." He leaned closer to the alien creature. "You'll regret it." The captured Vraxian scout ship drifted silently through the asteroid field, its engines powered down to minimal life support. Lieutenant Eric Chambers watched from the observation deck as his team worked. They had taken the vessel 2 weeks earlier in a daring raid that cost 7 human lives. The price was steep, but the intelligence gathered proved invaluable. "Lieutenant, we've broken through another encryption layer, called Dr. Lisa Patel, who hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours. Her fingers flew across the alien interface she'd modified to accept human inputs. "You need to see this immediately." Eric joined her at the command console. The screen displayed a complex star chart with hundreds of systems marked in different colors. "It's a political map," Lisa explained, eyes wide. "The Vraxians aren't alone. They're merely enforcers for something called the Galactic Concord. At least 30 different species, organized in a hierarchical structure." Eric studied the map. "And Earth, where do we fit?" Lisa highlighted a tiny section. "We were designated for elimination based on something called potential threat assessment. According to these files, they've been observing us for centuries. But why attack now? We barely had interstellar capability." "That's exactly why," Lisa said grimly. "Their protocols dictate eliminating potentially dangerous species before they develop sufficient technology to resist. Our quantum physics breakthroughs triggered their intervention threshold." Over the next several days, Lisa decoded more Vraxian data. The picture that emerged was disturbing. The Galactic Concord had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 20,000 years. Species deemed acceptable were gradually permitted to join as subordinate members. Those deemed threatening were eliminated before they could challenge the established order. On Sanctuary, John Hayes received Eric's encrypted transmission with growing horror. "So we're not facing one species but 30, he asked during the emergency council meeting. Dr. Patel's image nodded from the screen. "Yes, but there's a silver lining. Many of the subordinate species disagree with the policy of extermination. They simply fear speaking against the 5 dominant species that control the Concord." "We need more information," John decided. "Direct intelligence from inside Concord territory." Within a month, human survivors established Whisper, an intelligence network stretching across Concord space. Humans, with their biological similarity to several Concord species, proved surprisingly effective infiltrators. They gathered crucial data about Concord weaknesses, military deployments, and political fractures. "They believe they've eliminated most of us," reported Agent Beth Wilson from deep cover on a Concord trading hub. "They've scaled back the search for survivors. Complacency is setting in." The most significant breakthrough came when a Whisper operative encountered the Nesdari, a species that had also faced Concord extermination, but managed to survive in secrecy for generations. The Nesdari leader, resembling a tall humanoid with translucent skin, met with Susan Brooks aboard the Defiant. "Our ancestors refused to accept extinction," the alien explained in halting English learned from human broadcasts. "We have hiding places throughout Concord territory, technology we salvage, information that could help you. Why trust us?" Susan asked directly. "Because unlike us, you humans fight back," the Nesdari replied. "We merely survive. You might actually win." The alliance formed quickly. The Nesdari provided access to abandoned outposts and secret hyperspace routes unknown to the Concord. In exchange, humans shared their advancing weapons technology, particularly the innovations born from desperation. On a hidden research station orbiting a brown dwarf, Dr. Greg Daniels studied Vraxian physiology samples provided by Nesdari contacts. His team worked tirelessly to understand Concord vulnerabilities. "Their neural systems operate on completely different principles," he explained to the Research Council, "which explains why their psychology seems alien to us. They literally cannot comprehend certain human concepts." "Such as?" asked Admiral Foster. Greg's expression darkened. "Forgiveness, and its absence, vengeance. They understand dominance and submission, but not the human capacity to remember wrongs across generations." He pointed to his simulation results. "That psychological blind spot creates a strategic weakness we can exploit." "How so?" Foster pressed. "Because they'll never expect what we're planning next." Dr. Greg Daniels stared at the simulation results on his screen. 3 years of work had led to this moment. The equations pulsed with green confirmation markers, The Prometheus Protocol was theoretically viable. "You've done it," whispered his assistant. The small team gathered around him fell silent, understanding the weight of their achievement. Greg shook his head slowly. "I've created something terrible." Admiral Nickel Reeves reviewed the Prometheus Protocol specifications later that week. The gathered military leadership and scientists sat in uncomfortable silence as she closed the file. "Let me understand this clearly," she said. "This weapon targets the quantum entanglement fields that all Concord technology depends on." "Yes," Greg answered. "Their entire civilization relies on quantum manipulation at a level we were only beginning to understand before the attack. We discovered their technology has a fundamental flaw. It assumes certain universal constants that aren't actually constant." Major Karen Wilson leaned forward. "In simple terms, Doctor, we can create a cascading field disruption that would render all their technology useless. Permanently." Greg's voice was flat. "Ships would fail. Weapons would deactivate. Life support systems would collapse. Entire populations would die," added Admiral Reeves. The room erupted in debate. Some argued immediate deployment was necessary for human survival. Others insisted such a weapon crossed a moral line that would make humanity no better than the Concorde. Admiral Reeves finally raised her hand for silence. "We need to test it first. A limited deployment against a minor target." 1 week later, Major Karen Wilson led a strike team to a small Vraxian outpost on the edge of Concorde space. Their ship carried a prototype Prometheus device no larger than a suitcase. "Remember," Karen instructed her team, "we evacuate immediately after placement. We need to be clear before activation." The raid went smoothly. Karen's team planted the device and retreated to observe from a safe distance. When activated, there was no explosion, no visible energy discharge, just a subtle ripple in space that human instruments barely detected. On the outpost, every system simply stopped. Defensive shields dissolved. Communication arrays went silent. The Vraxian vessels docked at the station drifted powerless. "It worked better than predicted," Karen reported back to command. "Complete technological shutdown within a 30-kilometer radius." Admiral Reeves received the report with mixed emotions. Humanity now possessed a weapon that could bring the mighty Concorde to its knees. But at what cost? "We should attempt diplomacy one more time," she argued to the United Defense Council. "Now that we have leverage." Ambassador Frank Porter led the peace delegation to neutral space, transmitting open requests for dialogue on all Concorde frequencies. The response came 3 days later, a barrage of energy weapons that destroyed 2 of the 3 human ships. Porter's last transmission was brief. "They refuse to speak with vermin. Deploying countermeasures is now justified." Back on Sanctuary, the final components of the full Prometheus system were assembled. Unlike the test device, this version could theoretically affect an entire star system, or be calibrated for galaxy-wide deployment. President Laura Mitchell addressed the remaining human populations across their scattered colonies. Her face looked older than her 50 years, worn by the weight of the decision before them. "We did not choose this conflict. We did not fire the first shot. But we now possess the means to end this war decisively." She paused, collecting herself. "The question before us is not just whether we can survive, but what kind of species will survive. Are we willing to inflict the same genocidal tactics used against us?" The debate raged for days across all human settlements. The vote was painfully close, but the decision was made. "We will deploy the Prometheus Protocol," President Mitchell announced. "But not for extermination. It will be a demonstration, followed by one chance for the Concorde to negotiate peace." As the final preparations were made, Dr. Daniels made a personal entry in his journal. "I created this weapon to save humanity. I pray it doesn't cost us our humanity instead." Fleet Commander Richard Allen positioned his ships carefully. 27 vessels, all that remained of humanity's military force, arranged in a formation designed not for maximum defense, but for maximum visibility. They'd wanted to be seen. "All ships report ready, Commander," his first officer reported. Richard nodded, his weathered face revealing nothing of the tension he felt. Begin broadcast on all Concorde frequencies. Use their encryption patterns so they can't pretend not to hear us. Throughout Concorde space, on thousands of worlds and vessels, communication systems suddenly activated without authorization. Screens flickered to life, showing President Laura Mitchell standing alone against a plain background. People of the Galactic Concorde, she began without preamble. I am the leader of what remains of humanity. You attempted to exterminate us without warning, without negotiation, without cause beyond your fear of what we might become. She paused, letting her words sink in. We have spent these years not just hiding, but learning. We now understand your civilization better than you understood ours. We have discovered fundamental flaws in the quantum technologies upon which your entire society depends. On the Concorde's central command station, officials scrambled to shut down the broadcast. Nothing worked. In precisely 48 hours, President Mitchell continued, we will demonstrate our capability on an uninhabited star system at coordinates being transmitted with this message. After this demonstration, we will issue our terms for peace. Her eyes hardened. Should you reject these terms or attempt further aggression against any human settlement, we will deploy our technology across Concorde space. Your civilization will end. Not your lives. We are not genocidal like you. But your power, your technology, your empire. Everything. She leaned closer to the camera. This is humanity's warning to the galaxy. You attacked us without provocation. You'll regret it. The broadcast ended. Across Concorde space, officials dismissed the message as the desperate bluff of a dying species. On the Concorde's central hub world, Lieutenant Samantha Wright moved carefully through maintenance corridors. 3 years of deep cover work had positioned her perfectly for this mission. Her genetic modifications and surgical alterations made her appear as a member of one of the Concorde's subordinate species. She placed small devices at key junction points in the Central Command's power systems, not to damage them, but to gather intelligence. Every word spoken by Concorde leadership over the next 48 hours would be recorded and transmitted to the human fleet. Ridiculous threats from primitives, the Vraxian Supreme Commander hissed in the Emergency Council meeting. They have no such technology. We should not dismiss them so easily, cautioned an elder representative of the Eltran, one of the oldest Concorde species. Our intelligence suggests humans have developed in unexpected directions since the purge began. Nonsense, the Vraxian responded. If they had such capability, they would have used it already. Samantha listened through her implant while continuing her cover duties. The debate continued for hours without resolution. Most believed the human message was merely a desperate bluff, but a cautious minority urged sending observers to the coordinates. Back with the human fleet, the countdown continued. President Mitchell addressed her commanders. Once we demonstrate the Prometheus Protocol, there's no going back, she warned. If the Concorde refuses our terms, we must be prepared to follow through. Richard Allen nodded solemnly. My ships are positioned near critical Concorde infrastructure. We can deploy within minutes of receiving the order. Dr. Carol Bennett, who had taken over the Prometheus project after Dr. Daniel's death, checked the final calibrations. The demonstration device was ready, set to affect only the uninhabited system they had selected. The star would remain unharmed, but any technology within the system would fail permanently. 24 hours remaining, she announced. In her hidden observation post, Samantha Wright reported increased military activity. The Concorde was indeed sending observer ships to the coordinates, but also dispatching a massive battle fleet toward the suspected location of Sanctuary Colony. President Mitchell received the news grimly. They're calling our bluff while preparing to finish what they started. She turned to her advisors. The demonstration proceeds as planned, but prepare for immediate full deployment if they attack our people. The clock continued its relentless countdown. Paul Taylor had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. His cover as a minor administrative aide in the Concorde High Council was perfect. The biological modifications making him appear as a member of the Truluri species had been painful, but worth it. Now he sat silently recording every word as the most powerful beings in the galaxy argued about humanity's fate. The demonstration was concerning, admitted the Vraxian Supreme Commander. His typically imperious tone had given way to something Paul hadn't heard from a Vraxian before: uncertainty. The uninhabited system humanity had targeted now drifted in silence. 3 Concord observation vessels caught within the effect floated powerless, their crews barely surviving on emergency systems that operated on principles predating quantum technology. Concerning. The Eltran Elder's voice rose uncharacteristically. It's catastrophic. They've discovered the fundamental flaw in all our technology. If they deploy this weapon widely, they wouldn't dare, interrupted the Vraxian. They're too few, too weak. This is their final desperate act before extinction. The Malorian representative, her crystalline form catching the light, spoke for the first time. We have underestimated these humans at every turn. First by believing they would die quietly. Then by assuming they couldn't fight back effectively. Now by dismissing their clearly demonstrated capability. Paul's recording device captured every word as the debate intensified. The Concord was fracturing along its oldest political lines. The aggressive founding species, led by the Vraxians, pushed for immediate attack. The older, more cautious members urged negotiation. We should accept their terms, the Malorian insisted. Surrender to vermin. The Vraxian slammed his 4 arms against the table. I would rather die. That can be arranged, the Eltran Elder said quietly. But the rest of us prefer to survive. Meanwhile, at the edge of the sanctuary system, the colony's meager defenses prepared for the approaching Concord battle fleet. Director John Hayes watched from the command center as civilian evacuations proceeded to underground shelters. Fleet ETA 20 minutes, reported his tactical officer. Hayes nodded grimly. All defense platforms online. Prepare to transmit the emergency signal to President Mitchell if they open fire. The Concord fleet appeared at the system's edge, an armada of over 200 vessels against Sanctuary's 12 defensive platforms and 3 patrol ships. It seemed hopeless. Aboard the Concord flagship, Fleet Master Goran surveyed the human colony with contempt. Primitive defenses. This won't take long. Sir, his second reported suddenly, we're detecting unusual energy readings from several points in our formation. Explain, Goran demanded. Before an answer came, a different alert sounded. Throughout the Concord fleet, screens activated showing the face of a human female. This is Dr. Carol Bennett of Earth. Your leadership has received our demonstration and our terms. They are currently debating whether to comply or continue this war. She paused, her expression hardening. Your fleet is currently surrounded by 17 cloaked Prometheus devices. They are armed and ready. Any aggressive action against our colony will result in immediate activation. On the Concord command ship, Fleet Master Goran hesitated. Was this another bluff? Their sensors detected something, but couldn't identify the energy signature. At that moment, something unexpected happened. 3 vessels from his own fleet suddenly turned their weapons toward the Concord flagship. This is Captain Neeler of the Trillari contingent, came a new voice over the communication system. We have endured Concord oppression for generations. We stand with humanity. The Concord fleet froze in confusion. A subordinate species had never before openly rebelled. Back in the Concord Council chamber, the debate ended abruptly as emergency communications arrived from the Sanctuary fleet. They've what? The Vraxian Supreme Commander roared. The Trillari ships have defected, the aide repeated nervously. And the humans have their weapons in place. Fleet Master Goran awaits orders. Paul Taylor touched his concealed transmitter, sending this critical information to human command. The Eltran Elder rose slowly. I believe we have only one logical course of action now. She turned to face the Vraxian. We must negotiate. The Vraxian Supreme Commander hissed in fury, drew his ceremonial weapon, and lunged toward the communication array. I will order the attack myself. Several council guards moved to stop him, but they were too slow. Paul Taylor was not. 5 years of deep cover ended in a single moment as he intercepted the Vraxian, tackling the much larger alien to the ground. The Concorde flagship, Eternal Dominion, drifted silently in neutral space. Across from it, the human vessel Defiant maintained position, its much smaller size emphasizing the David versus Goliath nature of this confrontation. Between them stretched the newly established demilitarized zone, the first tangible result of the ceasefire. Captain Vincent Rodriguez straightened his uniform before entering the negotiation chamber. As humanity's chosen representative, he carried the hopes of every survivor on his shoulders. Remember, President Mitchell had told him before his departure, "We don't seek vengeance. We seek security, recognition, and a new order where no species faces extinction for simply existing." The negotiation chamber was deliberately designed with a circular table. No head, no foot, all participants equal. Vincent took his assigned seat as the Concorde representatives filed in. The Eltran Elder led their delegation, the Vraxians conspicuously absent after their supreme commander's failed attempt to continue the war. Captain Rodriguez, the Eltran, greeted him, her ancient eyes studying him carefully. "I have lived 900 years, and never expected to negotiate with a species we had condemned." "Life is full of surprises," Vincent replied evenly, "especially for those who try to exterminate us." For 3 days, they negotiated terms. The Prometheus Protocol loomed over every discussion, an unseen but ever-present threat. The human demands were simple but non-negotiable. Full recognition of humanity's right to exist, protection for all human colonies, reparations for Earth's destruction, and most importantly, reform of the Concorde's policies toward emerging intelligent species. "Your terms essentially dismantle the foundation of Concorde authority," protested one representative. "Yes," Vincent agreed without apology. "A foundation built on genocide deserves dismantling." On the 4th day, the agreement was reached. Vincent transmitted the final document to President Mitchell, who shared it with all human settlements. The response was mixed. Some celebrated while others felt the terms were too lenient toward those who had tried to wipe out humanity. 6 months later, the newly reformed Galactic Concorde held its first council meeting with human observers present. The power structure had shifted dramatically. The once dominant Vraxians had been demoted, while formerly subjugated species like the Trilleri gained new representation. President Mitchell addressed the combined human settlements on the anniversary of Earth's destruction. "Today we establish the memorial to Lost Earth," she said, standing before a monument built from stones gathered from each human colony. "We remembered not just to honor those we lost, but to remind ourselves of the cost of prejudice and fear." The memorial contained soil from Earth, preserved by those few who had grabbed handfuls during the desperate evacuations. Around it grew plants from humanity's homeworld, a living reminder of where they came from. Dr. Carol Bennett stood at the edge of the gathering, watching silently. The Prometheus Protocol remained humanity's greatest secret and ultimate insurance policy. Though the demonstration had shown its potential, no one beyond a select few knew its true capabilities or limitations. "Do you think they'll honor the agreement?" asked Richard Allen, now High Admiral of humanity's growing defense force. "They have little choice," Carol replied quietly. "But more importantly, I think some of them genuinely want to. The Eltran, the Malorians, they seem to understand what almost happened. And the Vraxians," Carol shrugged. "They'll need watching. Always." On a distant world that had once been a Concorde colony, human and Trilleri engineers worked side by side, rebuilding a civilization the Concorde had nearly destroyed. Similar scenes played out across formerly oppressed worlds as the Human Protected Worlds Alliance grew. Ambassador Frank Porter, who had survived the earlier failed peace mission, now represented humanity on the reformed Concorde Council. His first proposal was the establishment of the Sentinel Protocol, an early warning system to identify potential conflicts before they escalated to violence. "We learned the hardest way possible what happens when fear drives policy," he told the council. "Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We simply want to ensure no other species faces what we faced. In the darkness between stars, human ships patrolled alongside their new allies. The Prometheus Protocol remained dormant but ready, humanity's final warning to any who might again mistake technological advantage for the right to commit genocide. Earth was gone, but humanity had not only survived, they had changed the galaxy, not through conquest, but by standing firm against extinction and offering protection to others who faced the same threat. 50 years had passed since the Concord Treaty. Humanity had rebuilt, not just surviving but thriving among the stars. On New Earth, the largest human colony and unofficial capital of human space, a special ceremony was underway. Adrian Wells stood at attention beside his fellow cadets. Today marked their graduation from the Interstellar Defense Academy. His eyes drifted to the memorial stone at the center of the campus, a piece of original Earth bedrock, one of the few physical remnants of humanity's birthplace. Cadet Wells seems distracted, whispered Commander Lily Pottle to Admiral Stephen Brooks. The Admiral smiled slightly. His grandfather was Commander Jack Wells of the ISS Pathfinder, one of the few who witnessed Earth's fall and lived to tell about it. The boy carries that legacy heavily. The ceremony proceeded as dignitaries from 20 different species offered congratulations to the graduating class, the first to include not just humans but representatives from the Trilari, Nezdari, and even 3 young Malorians. This multicultural cooperation would have been unimaginable during the war. Later that evening, Adrian visited his grandfather in the veterans' residence overlooking New Earth's capital city. Jack Wells, now 93, sat in his hover chair by the window, his once commanding presence diminished physically, but not in spirit. "You did it then," the old man said, eyes bright with pride. "Academy honors, I hear." Adrian nodded, sitting across from his grandfather. "I've been assigned to the Diplomatic Security Corps. First posting is at the Concord Central Hub." Jack's expression darkened slightly. "The heart of the beast." "The heart of our allies now, grandfather," Adrian corrected gently. "Times have changed." Jack nodded reluctantly. "So they tell me. But I remember." "Tell me again," Adrian said, a familiar request between them. "About Earth. About the day." Jack's eyes grew distant. "The sky burned orange that day." He began, reciting the story Adrian had heard countless times yet never tired of hearing. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Concord Central Hub bustled with activity. The massive space station housed representatives from over 200 species, many who had joined the reformed Concord in the decades following the human conflict. In a secure meeting room, Dr. Maya Bennett, granddaughter of Carol Bennett and current custodian of the Prometheus Protocol, addressed the Security Council. "The containment has held for 50 years, she explained, displaying data on the quantum barrier surrounding the former Vraxian homeworld. They continue to develop along conventional technological lines, avoiding the quantum manipulation that triggered the protocol." The Eltrin Elder Vosa, successor to the elder who had negotiated the original peace, nodded thoughtfully. "And your recommendation, Doctor?" "We begin limited cultural exchange. No technology transfer, but dialogue. The younger generation of Vraxians has no memory of their empire. They've developed a rich artistic tradition we hadn't anticipated." "Dangerous," rumbled the Trilari representative, whose people had suffered longest under Vraxian rule. "Perhaps," Maya acknowledged, "but isolation breeds resentment. Controlled engagement offers a path to rehabilitation." After heated debate, the Council approved a limited exchange program. The decision reflected the philosophical shift the galaxy had undergone, from fear-based extermination to cautious integration. Back on New Earth, Jack Wells finished his story as night fell over the colony. "You're the future now," the old man told his grandson. "My generation fought to survive. Your parents' generation built stability. But yours has the hardest job." "What's that?" Adrian asked. "Forgiveness without forgetting. Building something truly new." Jack gestured toward the stars visible through his window. "We saved humanity with the Prometheus Protocol, but you'll save our humanity by knowing when not to use such power." Adrian nodded solemnly. Tomorrow he would ship out to the Concord hub, representing humanity where once they had been deemed vermin. The uniform he wore carried subtle reminders of Earth, blue piping for its oceans, patterns suggesting its continents, a remembrance without vengeance. As Jack drifted to sleep, Adrian stayed watching over his grandfather. The old man had witnessed humanity's darkest day and helped forge its renaissance. Now that torch passed to a new generation. Outside, the citizens of New Earth celebrated Founders' Day, commemorating not just what humanity had lost, but what they had built from those ashes, a society determined to ensure no species would ever again face extinction for simply existing.